I don't know if you've ever had one of those moments when your response to being asked if you could do someone a favour is, the answer's yes, now what's the question? I had just such a moment a couple of weeks back when, out of the blue, I was asked if I would be willing to give a lecture to some students at Beijing's Renmin University. Now, I know this will totally faze some of my best friends, who won't believe this for a moment, knowing the shy and retiring sort of person I am, but I have to admit to being one of those guys who just loves the sound of his own voice. Yes, I know, it's incredible, but true. So before I even knew what it was they wanted me to talk about, yes, of course, I'd be delighted, or words to that effect. Naturally, I assumed they wouldn't be expecting the lecture to be in Chinese, and I was right on that score. What I hadn't been expecting, though, was that they would be wanting to hear my loquacious tones for a full 3 hours and more. It appears they knew I had been in the BBC for more years than I cared to remember. Would I talk about the independence of the BBC, and how the BBC earned its enviable reputation over the years? A simple request, of course, but for 3 hours? I mean, I could say what I wanted to say about the BBC's independence in, 5 minutes? How was I going to fill the remaining 2 hours and 55 minutes? They wanted me to deliver the speech in 2 weeks' time, and the killer, because my day job was from 13:30 to 2300, they could squeeze me in at 8 o'clock in the morning, which would give me plenty of time to get into work before the allotted hour. 8 o'clock? That would mean that if I had to be there by, say, 7:45, I'd need to leave home at around 6:45 just to make sure I wasn't late, which meant getting up at 5:45. Oh, Lord, what had I got myself into? Too late to worry about that now. I feverishly set about seeing what Mr. Google's henchman could dig out from me in the way of facts. I look up Wikipedia. I search the BBC's website. I trawl YouTube, all through a proxy server, of course. I find websites set up by geeks and websites set up by radio amateurs, pictures of car stickers and of QSLs, not to mention transmitter masts and defunct pieces of studio equipment. And before long, it is no more a case of how am I going to fill the time, but what on earth can I possibly cut out to allow me to squeeze in everything I want to say. The fortnight's preparation is pure bliss, going down memory lane, revelling in nostalgia, though I still maintain that nostalgia just isn't what it used to be. And finally, the big day approaches. I decide to have an early night and set my alarm clock to 5:45 just in case. But what happens if I sleep through my alarm, or the dratted thing fails to go off? So I set another alarm to 5:40 and climb into bed, and worry that even with 2 alarms set to wake me up, I might keep on sleeping through them at such an ungodly hour. So just for good measure, I set a third alarm to 5:30, which will allow me to hit the snooze button and then not be so fast asleep that I don't hear the following 2 alarms. I'll wake up at 5:25. Outside, it's pitch black. Outside, it's also -5 degrees. I crawl into the shower and soak under a jet of hot water, deciding what shirt I can wear for maximum impact. My blue, turquoise and black one today, I think. I wrap up really well and creep out into the freezing night air and make my way to the subway station to catch one of the first trains of the day. Of course, this being Beijing, there were absolutely no seats to be had, despite the early hour, until 3 stations before I have to get out. Renmin University, otherwise known as the People's University of China, Zhongguo Renmin Dashi, was officially established in 1950, the first national university of the People's Republic. Its predecessor, established in 1937 during the Second Sino-Japanese War, was Shanbei Public School, and this accounts for the 1937 date prominently displayed around the campus. Naturally, I find I've arrived half an hour too early, but this gives me plenty of time to wander around the place and get my bearings. The large map at the entrance, alas, does not prove to be that useful to me, as I stupidly forgot to look up the Chinese for journalism school. But having been told that it is located to the right of the West Gate, I head off in that direction. There's no sign of anything remotely looking like a journalism school, but instead I get to see some of the 22 other schools, 13 research institutes, and the graduate school. They say that one of the university's most famous quirks is something called the English Corner, where, every Friday evening, people gather at the Chusho Garden near the East Gate to practice their English. It being only 7:30 in the morning, I'm surprised to find a group of students shivering in the morning cold, shouting out lines from a play in English. Perhaps they're getting themselves ready for an evening performance. Just a little further on, there's another group warming up for the day with a spot of Tai Chi. Don't you think anybody normal would just stay in bed for an extra half hour rather than face the bitter cold that has been gripping Beijing for the past 2 weeks? The campus itself, though, is quite charming. With ponds and trees and sitting areas, someone has gone to quite a bit of trouble to make the place welcoming and attractive. Wikipedia tells me this area is a good place to meet and communicate with the students of the university and the common people of China. But there aren't that many common people around at this early hour, let alone any of the 1,165 international students, many of them from South Korea. In fact, I learned later that there are apparently so many South Korean students that the International Students' Dining Room has a separate Korean menu aside from the traditional Chinese one. Renmin University is a popular destination for visiting foreign dignitaries too. During his state visit to China in January 2008, the then British Prime Minister Gordon Brown visited Renmin with Premier Wen Jiabao to talk with students, scholars, sportsmen and entrepreneurs. Thank God I arrived in Beijing 30 months too late. What a dreadful thought to have bumped into that Scottish apology for a politician. I pity the Chinese students who were probably hand-picked to feign politeness to old Gordy. I'm awoken from my reveries as I walk past a sculpture of immaculately dressed students, hanging on to every utterance of their wise old lecturer, and for a moment I imagine myself pronouncing to the masses from my vast store of locked-up wisdom. But the dream soon fades back again into reality. Time marches on, though, and with no sign of a journalism school anywhere remotely near the right of the Western Gate, I'm glad that I've already agreed to be met by a student who goes by the name of Da Wei. I've hardly had time to text him that I've arrived before I am greeted by a smiling face and escorted from the West Gate in a leftwards direction. The School of Journalism is ahead of us, but we veer off into another building, walk up 2 flights of stairs, and find our way to room 307, immediately opposite the communal toilets. Amazingly, my little laptop works straight away when plugged into the AV system of room 307, and I'm told how cute my bright orange loudspeakers look protruding out from behind my red PC. The students stifle yawns as they drift in to find a seat, and I feel positively sorry for them. To think I'm responsible for disturbing their beauty sleep. But I guess if it hadn't been me, they would still have had to haul themselves out of bed to listen to somebody else. Amazingly, they're smiling, all 25 to 30 of them, and they continue to smile even when I open my mouth and they realize they have to cope with an English accent rather than an American drawl that Chinese have been brought up to believe is the real English. I tell them about Marconi. I play them an extract of Jeremy Paxman bullying Michael Howard. I play them an extract of Robin Day bullying Sir John Knott. I play them extracts of Maggie Thatcher being bullied by a common person whose name she forgets, of Dame Nellie Melba still clutching her handbag as she warbles, of Radio Normandy, of 2MT, of Lord Haw-Haw, of Caroline and 270 and Big L and Veronica, of Capital and LBC, and of course of the Empire and General Forces and World Services. And before I know it, my 3 hours are up before I've even got to the end of my beloved PowerPoint presentation. But they want me to go on. They demand that I go on. I am not allowed to stop. I continue spouting forth, filling the room with pithy insight into the independence of the BBC. I answer their questions. They want more. I tell them about the time I was arrested in Saudi Arabia after broadcasting on Saudi TV. They still want more. I tell them about smell-o-vision, about foldable video screens, about thought transference experiments. And finally the dinner bell goes. I'm already into my 4th hour of performance, but these are students through and through. Food beckons. Finally, my dulcet tones start to lose their appeal when weighed up against the thought of lunch. These are Chinese students, though, through and through. no rushing off the way British students would undoubtedly have done. They clap, they thank me while looking at their watches, and edge out of the room, leaving behind a hardcore of half a dozen who have obviously been hand-picked to ensure that I am able to find my way off the campus. But first I must pose for the obligatory photographs with a professor who has originally invited me in. I tell the hardcore 6 that I will be unlikely to lose my way over the 150-metre walk in a straight line to the West Gate. And bless their cotton socks, you can see the cogs turning over in their brains, that on the one hand, this foreign devil probably speaks the truth, but on the other hand, they were volunteered to escort me out. But reason finally prevails. They don't want to find their portion of chow has been dolloped out to someone less deserving, and as I accelerate my pace to put distance between me and them, they wave goodbye and turn on their heels towards the canteen block. On the sports track, a whole load of students are already warming themselves up for a marathon afternoon session of study, as I slope off to a subway station and head for home. It's been a good morning. I've decided I like Renmin University, and I like its students.